The world is watching with bated breath, as tensions spike once again, reaching a fever pitch across the globe. Iran has issued a stark warning to the United States, a clear and present message delivered through state media, amplified for the world to hear. This time, the warning targets both U.S. support for Israel, a long-standing alliance, and former President Donald Trump, adding a personal dimension to the geopolitical chess game. Iran's message, a firm declaration, further Israeli aggression, backed by America, and its unwavering support, will trigger a severe response, a retaliation that could reshape the region. The immediate context is a recent escalation, a dangerous dance of power, in the shadow war between Iran and Israel, a conflict fought in the dark corners of intelligence and espionage. Covert operations and retaliatory strikes, each action provoking a reaction, have pushed the region closer to open conflict, threatening to engulf the entire area in flames. Tehran's warning is aimed at the entire U.S. political establishment, across party lines, not just the current administration, but all those who shape American foreign policy. Iran wants Washington to understand, to truly grasp the gravity of the situation. There are consequences for its Middle East policies, repercussions that will be felt far and wide. By threatening Trump directly, singling him out by name, Iran is tapping into America's political divisions, exploiting the existing fractures in the American landscape. The move is calculated, a deliberate strategy, meant to pressure U.S. leaders and sow discord, creating internal strife and weakening their resolve. But it could also backfire, leading to unforeseen and unwanted outcomes, uniting Americans against a common threat, forging a sense of national solidarity in the face of external pressure. The international community has responded with concern, expressing deep unease over the escalating tensions, urging de-escalation, calling for calm and a return to diplomatic solutions. U.S. allies condemn the threats. Standing in solidarity with America, others remain silent or call for restraint, adopting a more cautious approach. The United Nations urges all parties to step back, to pull back from the brink of disaster, but such calls often go unheeded, lost in the noise of geopolitical maneuvering. In the volatile Middle East, a region perpetually on edge, a handful of leaders in Washington, Tehran, and Tel Aviv, the key players in this dangerous game, hold the fate of the region and perhaps the world in their hands. Their next moves will decide the course of history if this crisis fades or explodes, leading to widespread conflict and devastation. The stakes are higher than ever, the risks are immense. The world waits to see with bated breath and growing anxiety if words will turn into action, if diplomacy will prevail, or if military force will take over. The next chapter is about to be written, and its contents remain shrouded in uncertainty. To understand today's crisis, a crisis steeped in history and fraught with complexity, we must look back, tracing the intricate and often turbulent path that has led us to this point. The U.S. and Iran were once close allies, bound by mutual interests and strategic partnerships, with America supporting the Shah as a regional anchor, viewing Iran as a bulwark against Soviet influence and a key player in maintaining stability in the Middle East. Everything changed in 1979, a watershed moment that irrevocably altered the course of U.S.-Iran relations. With the Iranian Revolution, a seismic event that ushered in a new era of Islamic rule and anti-American sentiment. The storming of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, a brazen act that defied international norms, and the agonizing 444-day hostage crisis, a prolonged ordeal that captivated the world and deepened the chasm between the two nations, severed ties and set the stage for decades of hostility, marking the beginning of a long and arduous journey of mistrust and antagonism. Since then, mistrust and indirect conflict, often playing out through proxy actors and regional rivalries, have defined the relationship, creating a complex web of competing interests and mutual suspicion. The U.S. accuses Iran of supporting terrorism and pursuing nuclear ambitions. Viewing these actions as threats to regional stability and global security, Iran accuses the U.S. of imperialism and waging economic warfare through crippling sanctions that have devastated its economy and harmed its people. Sanctions and proxy wars, fueled by ideological differences and geopolitical ambitions, have deepened the divide, creating a seemingly insurmountable barrier to reconciliation. A brief thaw came with the 2015 nuclear deal, a testament to the power of diplomacy and the potential for peaceful resolution. The JCPOA, or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program, accepting stringent restrictions and international monitoring in exchange for sanctions relief, a promise of economic revitalization and reintegration into the global community, a rare moment of hope, a glimmer of possibility in a relationship marred by decades of conflict. But in 2018, President Trump withdrew from the deal, unilaterally abandoning the agreement despite international objections, and reimposed sanctions, intensifying economic pressure on Iran and further isolating the country, shattering fragile trust and plunging the relationship back into a state of deep crisis. Iran responded by gradually ramping up its nuclear activities, exceeding the limits set by the JCPOA and raising concerns about its intentions. The collapse of the JCPOA reignited tensions, pushing the two nations closer to the brink of direct confrontation and set the stage for today's confrontations, a dangerous escalation that threatens regional stability and global peace. Decades of animosity, punctuated by missed opportunities and broken promises, have made diplomacy nearly impossible, creating a seemingly intractable deadlock. Each side sees the other as the main obstacle to peace, trapped in a cycle of blame and recrimination that prevents meaningful dialogue. The result, a cycle of escalation with no easy off-ramp, a dangerous trajectory that could lead to unforeseen and potentially catastrophic consequences. The past is never far from the present in U.S.-Iran relations, a constant reminder of the deep-seated grievances and unresolved issues that continue to shape the present and cast a shadow over the future. The Iran-Israel conflict is a shadow war shaping the Middle East. It's fought through cyber attacks, assassinations, and proxy militias, not open battlefields. Iran refuses to recognize Israel, seeing it as an occupier. Israel views Iran's nuclear ambitions as existential threats. Iran's strategy surrounds Israel with hostile proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas, deterring direct attacks. Israel counters with covert strikes, sabotage, and targeted assassinations. It's war between wars. Both sides aim to weaken the other without triggering all-out war. The U.S. is a key player, providing Israel with military aid and intelligence. Iran sees U.S. support as enabling Israeli aggression, linking Washington and Tel Aviv as unified adversaries. Every warning from Tehran is aimed at both capitals. The result, a dangerous regional game where the actions of one can trigger consequences for all. The shadow war keeps the region on edge. Each move risks igniting a wider conflict. The stakes couldn't be higher. Iran has issued its latest warning, a stark reminder of simmering tensions in the Middle East. This wasn't just a general threat against the U.S., but something far more specific. The warning explicitly singled out Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. This direct targeting raises serious questions about the nature of the ongoing conflict between the two nations. The roots of this animosity go back to January 2020, a pivotal moment in U.S.-Iran relations. It was then that Trump ordered the controversial drone strike, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. That drone strike resulted in the death of General Qassem Soleimani, a key figure in the Iranian regime. Soleimani wasn't just any general, he was widely regarded as a national hero in Iran, a symbol of the country's strength and resolve. He was also the architect of Iran's regional strategy, the mastermind behind its influence in the Middle East. His death at the hands of the U.S. was a major blow to Iran's strategic ambitions. Beyond the strategic implications, it was also a personal humiliation for Iran's leadership, a direct challenge to their authority. Massive crowds mourned Soleimani's death, a testament to his popularity and the depth of grief felt across the nation. In the wake of the assassination, Iranian leaders vowed revenge, promising to hold those responsible accountable for their actions. Iran's initial missile strike on a U.S. base in Iraq was seen as a symbolic act of retaliation. However, this response was considered insufficient by many within Tehran, who demanded a more forceful and direct response. Since then, Iranian officials have repeatedly and publicly called for retribution against Trump, holding him personally responsible for Soleimani's death. Their calls for justice extend to others involved in the decision-making process, signaling a broad desire for accountability. U.S. intelligence agencies have been actively working to thwart several Iranian plots targeting American officials. These threats are not taken lightly, and the potential for escalation is considered very real. This personal vendetta adds a dangerous element of volatility to an already complex geopolitical landscape. It further strains an already tense relationship between the United States and Iran, making diplomatic solutions even more challenging. Renewing the threat now is likely a strategic move by Iran, designed to exert pressure on the U.S. It serves as a constant reminder that, from Iran's perspective, the account for Soleimani's death remains open and unresolved. With U.S. elections looming on the horizon, the timing of this renewed threat is particularly significant. Iran's message is clear. Past actions, especially those resulting in the loss of life, have lasting consequences that will not be forgotten. The conflict between the U.S. and Iran is no longer just about geopolitical strategy and regional power. It has become deeply personal, fueled by grief, anger, and a desire for revenge. The stakes for American leaders are higher than ever as they navigate this complex and dangerous situation. The world is watching closely, waiting to see how the U.S. will respond to this latest provocation and whether further escalation can be avoided. Experts disagree on Iran's intentions. Some see the threats as posturing for domestic audiences, a way to rally support amid economic woes. Others warn Iran's growing military capabilities and foreign backing make the threats real. Underestimating Iran could be a grave mistake. Another view: Iran is escalating carefully, seeking leverage without triggering all-out war. It's a dangerous balancing act, pushing limits but avoiding catastrophe. The risk of miscalculation is high. A single incident could spiral out of control. All sides are walking a tightrope, hoping to avoid disaster. In this volatile environment, even a small misstep could be fatal. U.S.-Iran-Israel tensions ripple far beyond the region. Russia and China back Iran militarily and economically, complicating any U.S. response. America's European allies are caught in the middle, wary of conflict but critical of U.S. policy shifts. A war would divide NATO and destabilize the West. The Middle East itself would face chaos, with Gulf states fearing economic and security fallout. Refugee crises and collapsed security structures could follow. A major conflict would also distract the U.S. from other global priorities like China and Russia. Rivals could exploit the chaos to advance their own agendas. The stakes are global, not just regional. The world's balance of power could shift overnight. The cost of escalation would be felt everywhere. The Middle East's stability is vital to the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's key oil choke point. 1/5 of global oil passes through daily. Iran has threatened to close it, a move that would send oil prices soaring and trigger global recession fears. Even the threat of conflict disrupts markets and fuels inflation. U.S. sanctions have devastated Iran's economy but also created hardship for ordinary Iranians. Economic pain makes the region more volatile and desperate. A wider conflict would cost trillions, destroy infrastructure and disrupt global supply chains. The economic stakes are enormous for all sides. That's why, despite the rhetoric, everyone hesitates to go to war. The world's prosperity hangs in the balance. Beneath the headlines, ordinary people pay the highest price. In Iran, sanctions and uncertainty make daily life a struggle. In Israel, the threat of war is ever present, shaping society and politics. Americans too face risks, from economic fallout to personal threats against leaders. A wider war would put countless lives at risk, both on the battlefield and at home. The human cost is often forgotten in the rhetoric of power. Most people in all three countries want peace and stability. They are caught in a conflict they cannot control. Remembering the human element is crucial. It's what's truly at stake in this dangerous game. The world stands at a crossroads. One path, continued shadow war, covert strikes, cyber attacks, and proxy battles. This unstable equilibrium could erupt at any moment. Another path, a return to diplomacy, reviving or renegotiating a nuclear deal. This would require tough concessions from all sides, but it's the best hope for peace. The worst-case scenario: direct military conflict, with catastrophic consequences for the region and the world. Airstrikes, naval battles, and proxy wars would devastate economies and lives. The stakes: the future of the Middle East and global stability. For Iran, it's about survival. For Israel, security. For the U.S., influence and non-proliferation. The choices made now will shape the next chapter. Will the conflict simmer, find a fragile peace, or explode into war? The world is watching and waiting. The next move could change everything.